I was walking down the hallway when suddenly a girl kicked me in the butt. I turned around and yelled in anger. What on earth is wrong with you? Didn't you write it on your back? Surprised, I touched my back and realized there was a piece of paper on it. The words "kick me" were clearly written there. What the heck? I looked around to find the culprit and saw my brother hiding in a corner, holding his stomach and laughing. I knew it right away. It was another one of his stupid pranks. Dang it. Every time I talk about my twin brother Loki, my whole body trembles with anger. I know, what a weird name, right? But it suits him so well, and it was really a torture having to live with him. Loki was always pulling pranks on everyone around him, and instead of making people laugh, he only brought discomfort and embarrassment. He even ignored all of my advice and said, "Come on, don't be so serious, Layla, it's just a joke." Jeez, I hated my troublesome brother. For people like him, April Fool's Day is like a national day. He was always preparing the most outlandish pranks for it, and I am not exaggerating. Last year, somehow, Loki tricked his ex-bestie Rich into changing clothes in the girls' restroom. Then he stole all of Rich's clothes and hid them away. As a result, Rich couldn't leave the restroom because he was too embarrassed. He was only rescued when the school ended and the security guard was going around to check. After that incident, Rich had transferred school due to being teased too much. So, learning from experience, this year's April Fool's Day, I tried to hide from my brother's sight. I went to school 30 minutes early, didn't hang around the places Loki used to visit, and even blocked his number. I was so hopeful that my obnoxious brother would just forget about my existence. However, it seems God didn't hear my prayer. No matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't escape from being his target. At lunchtime, I was putting the sandwich in my mouth when suddenly a spicy sensation tore my throat. My face was hot and sweat was helplessly pouring out. Desperately, I shouted for everyone's help. At that moment, Loki appeared out of nowhere with a smug look. Happy April Fool's Day. You think you can escape from me, sis? Tears and snot started to flow from my eyes and nose. I hurriedly grabbed the Coke bottle on the table to drink, but when I just unscrewed the cap of the bottle, the Coke violently shot up, making my whole body drenched. You look so funny. That embarrassing scene was seen by everyone around us. They gleefully laughed and filmed my pathetic state. Soon later, I had to change into my gym uniform to continue my day. If you thought that was all that happened on April Fool's Day, it's not. Loki continued to celebrate his National Day with more sinister pranks. However, the next victim wasn't me, but someone else, a very special person. That afternoon, Loki and I attended a math class together. Seeing him laugh and chat happily with his friends made me very upset. At that moment, from outside the door, a young teacher with messy clothes entered. She clumsily adjusted her outfit and cheerfully introduced herself to us. "Oh, hi everyone. I'm sorry for being late. I'm Evan George and I'll be teaching for Mr. Corner today." Before Miss George could finish, Loki interrupted. "You look like a chicken." His words made the whole class burst into laughter and Miss George's face turned red with embarrassment. "Shut up! Stop making trouble!" Loki didn't say anything but just replied to me with a smirk. Looking at his face, I sensed that something bad was about to happen. And indeed, Miss George was unable to write anything on the board. Even though she pressed so hard she broke all the chalks, still not a single line appeared. When she frantically wiped the board with a wet cloth, it suddenly foamed up. Who put soap on the board? While everyone in the class was laughing again at her nervous face, I found her so pitiful. "Miss, please use the projector. We can project the formulas on it." "Right. That's a great idea," she happily told me, then quickly turned on the projector. Loki leaned close to my ear and spoke in a mocking voice. "Right, that's a great idea." Having said that, he still put on his usual sly grin, a sinister sign that foreshadowed all the troubles that were about to come. "What are you planning again?" "Well, I've just changed the position of a few keys. Sure enough, when Miss George was typing on the keyboard, she became so frustrated because she couldn't type a single meaningful word. The letters were all messed up. Can you just hurry up? When can we start class? Some boys began to join my brother and tease the poor substitute teacher. Under the heavy pressure, she postponed the class and hurriedly left in embarrassment. Seeing her poor appearance, I quickly ran after her. Miss, are you alright? I'm fine, but it seems like I'm not fit to be a teacher. I'm sorry for my brother's stupid pranks. He's always like that and driving people crazy. But the other students don't seem to like me either. Come on, don't let him put you off. Believe me, you can do it. After regaining her composure, Miss George took a deep breath and returned to the classroom. It was great to see that she looked slightly better. About 30 minutes later, when the class was peaceful, the fire alarm suddenly rang. Fire! Run! Loki stood up and shouted, then repeatedly gestured to everyone in the class to leave. Another stupid prank again? I got up angrily and pushed his arm down. Stop it, Loki! Grow up and stop being a joke. Some boys even agreed. That's right, dude. We have enough fun. Let her teach. Yeah, man, simmer down. Even Miss George frowned in anger and threatened to send him to her office if he continued to interrupt the class. But I didn't do this. Stop lying. Although my brother tried to explain, no one believed him. But just a few minutes later, smoke from the doorways began to spread into the classroom, followed by a loudspeaker announcement from the principal, ordering everyone to leave the building immediately. At that point, we all panicked and tried to escape. Miss George hurriedly guided everyone to the safe exit as smoke and fire filled the whole building. I was about to run when suddenly I heard a cry for help. It was Loki's. His leg was being stuck under a large wall. Layla! Help me! I tried to push the wall off, but it was too heavy for me. Seeing the fire slowly spreading, I was so scared that I cried helplessly. At that moment, Miss George appeared, signaling to me that when she counted to 3, we would lift the wall together so Loki could crawl out. Thank God, we were successful. After my brother got out, the 3 of us quickly left the building. Fortunately, Loki only suffered minor injuries to his leg. But after that incident, he learned a life lesson for himself. If he didn't pull pranks on others all the time, his alarm could have been trusted. Everyone could have gotten out sooner. He wouldn't have been trapped under a wall and risked both his life and mine. A few weeks later, everything was back to normal. We started going back to school, and the first thing my brother did was apologize to Miss George. Now he's more grown up and no longer continues his outrageous pranks.
You may or may not believe my story, but I'll tell it like it is and you decide for yourselves. My name's Marcel. You wouldn't look it, but I'm actually 87 years old and I'm still in school. How did this happen? Listen and see. I'll tell you all about it. I have many names, all depending on the situation and the life I choose to live. But my real name is Marcel. I'll be as open as possible with you to tell you the whole truth. Why do I look like this, you may ask? I was a skeptic as well. I should go on ahead. Growing up in a normal family, my family was Catholic, but I did not identify with any religion ever. Because of this, my mother was always upset and asked God's forgiveness in church. Father himself said that it happens to teenagers. They cannot find their belonging, their place in life, and he advised his mother and father to be patient and show leniency. However, as the years went by, I only became convinced that I could not bring myself to believe in the politics of the church. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to offend the feelings of believers. I respect them. But personally, I don't refer to anyone, not to God, not to Buddha, not to any of the holy images. I grew up on facts, scientific facts that have been verified for many decades. Such was my faith, a faith in science. Maybe that love is what brought me to you now, who knows? One day my mother asked me to bring donations to the church. At the time, my younger brother Henry was very sick. He had a high fever for weeks. Instead of going to the doctors, my mother treated him with her prayers. I was in such a scandal at the time. Mum, I'll go to the hospital, call an ambulance myself. Don't you dare, everything is in God's hands, he knows what to do. How can you say that when your child is sick? He has a fever. He hasn't eaten or drunk for over 2 weeks. Don't you think your God is a little busy helping my little brother? God gave such an unbelieving child as punishment. It's all because of you. What does that have to do with me? I have to pay for all your sins. I could not stand this nonsense, so I ran to the doctor. My brother was quickly hospitalized. He was already dehydrated, plus he had an acute infection. 5 days later, he passed away right in the hospital. That hit me hard. And you know what my mum said? I'll never forget what she said. She wiped away her tears at the bedside and said, "If God decided to take him away, then we don't deserve him. He's going to heaven." That was the last straw on my nerves. I yelled at her, yelling at the whole hospital that there was no God, that if there was one, he wouldn't let him die. And best of all, he wouldn't give such irresponsible parents. I was immediately slapped in the face by my father. After the funeral, I didn't speak to them at all, and instead of mourning, my parents took me by force to the church and put me on my knees in front of the icons. "Stay here for a while. You need to purify yourself." "Mum's right, son. We cannot lose you too. We have an unclean power." "There's nothing in me. Keep your myths to yourself. Do you know that keeping a man against his will is a violation of my rights? This is a criminal offence." "You see, Father, demons are talking in him again." Father nodded silently. He took another donation from my parents' purse and promised that in 3 weeks he would let me go as a different person. I was given a room, different clothes, and forced to pray all day long. I thought it was all a great nonsense. After 3 days I got fed up and decided to run away. I stole a kitchen knife from the dining room, and under the pretext of going to the bathroom, I ran from the church at full speed and used the knife to open the locks. They caught me, tried to tie me up, and I accidentally scratched my sister's arm. She started screaming that I had demons in me, and then she began to read some kind of prayer and said that I would either become a normal, God-fearing person or, on the contrary, I would succumb to evil forces and be cursed for the rest of my life. Well, the second happened. I didn't believe in God. I just became furious. I went and set fire to my room. While the firemen were figuring it out, the first thing I did was run away to another city and get a job so I had enough to eat. And I was offered a place to live at my job, which suited me fine. That's when I came up with my first name, Briss. Said I'd lost my memory and couldn't remember anything. I looked like a tough guy, so they took me for any kind of physical work without any problems. That's what I needed. My parents didn't even look for me. I think they were even glad that the little demon had gotten away. But I realised that I couldn't forgive them for their negligent treatment of Henry, which had cost him his life. That's how I lived my life. Years went by, first 5, then 10. It wasn't until 10 whole years later that I realised that I hadn't changed outwardly. People from outside who already knew me very well began to throw around comments that I was something different, that it wasn't the norm not to grow up and get older. I realised this myself. The thought of that curse from my sister, the nun, didn't leave me alone. The only thing I remembered was that she told me that I would be doomed to eternal loneliness. Then another 10 years passed and I realised that she was right. After all, in 20 years of living on my own, I hadn't made any friends, I'd never had a girlfriend. I was alone the whole time, just working. And I never changed my appearance. I was young, I still am. I had to move so I didn't scare people. And since then, I've been wandering around every 7 or 8 years so people don't ask questions. 4 years ago, I came to a city that was new to me and I chose the name Raoul. I thought it was never too late to learn, so I pretended I was an orphan schoolboy and went to school. That's when I had my first love in life, named Ines. I ran after her like a madman. She thought I was so smart because I knew so much. We fell in love and started dating. I'd already forgotten about the curse, and then I started thinking about the future. What should I do if in 10 years she asked me why I stayed a high school student? What do I say when I'm going to leave? But those questions didn't take long. Ines came over to my house one day and saw these pictures from 30 years ago. She was shocked when she saw the date. I figured since that she was no stranger to me, I should tell her everything. Ines was frightened. At first she didn't believe me, but then she suggested I go to church and confess. I resisted for a long time, but I knew she was right. So, we got ready and drove to the place where it all began. I had a strange feeling. I was uncomfortable. The father was still alive, and when he saw me, he fell to the floor. He started screaming that I was a demon in the flesh. Then that nun came running in, spraying her holy water on me, saying that I was cursed, and that I was going to be young and lonely for the rest of my life. But what's nastier, these two told my girlfriend that if she would be with me, give me children, they would be as cursed as me, and our whole family would be cursed. What do you think? Ines was also an atheist, but after that she ran away. I was shattered, sent everyone away, wanted to take pictures of Henry out of the house as a last resort. My parents had another child. The only thing my mother told me was to stay away. I asked for pictures of Henry, but she said they were gone, and so were my things. My father didn't even come out of the house. I was disowned by my parents, the church, and my girlfriend. Maybe I really am cursed, I thought. I went to my house and started packing. I had to change my location. Staying in this town was no longer an option, especially since Ines was there. At first, I didn't leave the house. I kept thinking maybe I should confess, open up to God, so I could live a normal life. I couldn't believe it would last forever. I packed my things and was about to leave, but I saw a frightened Ines on the doorstep. "And you? What are you doing here?" "Come with me." I got in her car and she drove me somewhere. The only thing she said to me was, "I thought a lot about what you said and everything that happened. You know, I don't believe in God or religion either, but I believe in science." She brought me to a professor. I had an examination, and it turned out that I had this pathology. I will be forever young in appearance. I will live longer than ordinary people by maybe 100 years, and only then I will start aging. But it's not a curse, and that's all I needed to know. What will happen next, I don't know, but for now, I live the way I live. Ines is by my side. I'll think about the rest later.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joko. You'll think I'm just a normal teenager. I'm short with shoulder-length hair, but it looks weird when I'm going to work instead of school. Yes, you heard right. I work as a marketing manager for an advertising company, and for a long time. Do you want to know how it happened? I'll tell you all about it. You will be surprised to learn that I am, by the way, a valuable employee at work. I have many friends, acquaintances, and good colleagues. I am independent and provide for myself. You may ask, where are my parents? I left them for another city when I was 18 years old. Yes, you hear me right. Now you have a question in your head about how old I really am. I'm 30 now. Are you shocked? I'll tell you more. Not only are you in shock, but all the people around me. In general, actually it's kind of a family thing. On my mother's side, my grandmother doesn't look her age. Yes, even my mother. She is now 50 years old and looks 30. And she also has a tiny figure. She has gorgeous black hair, white teeth, all her own. She can't afford to wear fashionable, youthful things and looks just gorgeous. She and my dad are the same age, but he looks like her father. Some passers-by are even slightly perplexed when they kiss each other on the lips at parting. My mom says it's all about genetics. My dad is American and my mom is Japanese, and her wonderful genes were passed on to me. I grew up, by the way, like all ordinary babies. First I learned to sit, then stand, walk, and so on. And then, when I was 12 years old, my appearance seemed to freeze in place. So eventually, I turned 15, then 18, and I still looked like a teenager. My mother immediately noticed that I took after her. She warned me that in life, I will have some difficulties, so I should be prepared for this and carry my ID everywhere. I kissed my parents goodbye and left home when I went to college. It was located in a neighboring city, so I had to learn independence from that moment. So the difficulty started as soon as I arrived at the bus stop. The saleswoman asked me how old I was because she didn't want to sell me a ticket. I showed my ID as proof, but she looked at it for probably 15 minutes. My bus had already left during this time, and she still did not believe that the document was authentic. I was in a bad mood, but I was allowed to leave. I arrived at my dorm, and the same problems were waiting for me there. On the first couple of days at school, among the students, the teachers noticed me and asked where my mother was or whose sister I was. As soon as I told them my name, they believed I was covering for my older brother or sister. Sometimes it got to the point where they called my parents via video link with a director to prove my age and name. Absurd! I was starting to get really mad at the way I looked. 6 months later, my patience broke at the end when I went to the store to buy a laptop through a card. These 6 months, I saved money by honest work, making essays and practical tasks to order. I did a good job of creative work. I drew and wrote well. With this money, I decided to buy a better computer. But the seller thought that I stole the card from my mother and wouldn't take it. Because of the scandal and nerves, I was taken to the police station and my mother had to go to another city to get me out of prison. I despaired and did not know what to do. Then my mother opened her purse and showed me her makeup when we came to my dorm room. I didn't understand what it was for because I never wore makeup. But my mother said that's how she saved herself once. And she gave me a light makeup to make me look a little older. Then she took me shopping and we completely changed my wardrobe. We bought more classic things. All my sneakers had been replaced with shoes, torn jeans and trousers, and I changed my t-shirts for blouses. And now I was wearing elegant handbags. I now had to do styling and makeup every day. But you know what? It really helped me. At least I looked a couple of years older, not like a child. Of course, I was very tired of putting on a marathon every day, but I liked that I was perceived differently now. When I graduated from college and started looking for a job, my resume was also surprising because people couldn't believe that a 16 to 17-year-old girl had already graduated from college. I was called for an interview to personally look at me, and I explained to everyone what cool genes I have. In general, I was hired after all. And no, not because of my appearance, but because of my knowledge and skills. Sometimes I still hear colleagues chattering about my height, and on New Year's Day, they gave me a pacifier or a bottle of milk. But nevertheless, I know that this is kind. You know, looking young is great, and I can't wait to look like my mom. I think it's only at that point that it's a real compliment. A couple of months later, one of my colleagues came up to me at work and told me that she had a girlfriend. She is a photographer and is looking for models to advertise teen clothing. I already took the hint and flatly refused such an offer, but she persuaded me with fees. Yes, they paid very well, and I thought for a couple of minutes and agreed. After all, extra money never hurts. When I got to the studio, the staff were talking to me because I wasn't wearing makeup. The photographer herself knew the whole truth. She saw how awkward I was and immediately took the situation into her own hands. She asked her colleagues not to do this. I was given clothes, I tried them on, and they were just right for me. I looked just like a schoolgirl. After taking a few series of pictures, I was paid and went home. Within a week, the pictures were hanging on huge banners in the city. I was so angry. If I had known that the pictures would be hanging around the city, I would never have agreed, I shouted. My colleagues took selfies against the background of the advertisement and sent them to me. I felt like a real child. I got hysterical again and called my mother. Mom came to me with my favorite buns, which she baked. I ate them and cried. Mom, why do we have such a curse? I asked her, but she said that this is not a curse, but a gift. I didn't agree with her, but my mother explained that a person can buy everything except youth. Not many people have this kind of gift. I'm proud that we are special, my mother said, and I suddenly realized that this was true. We don't have to have facial plastic surgery, facelifts, and Botox just to remove wrinkles. I liked this idea, and from that moment, I accepted myself as I am. Well, life has become easier. As for the others, I've learned to hold out my middle finger held high. If you liked my story, please like it, write comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Here's me worrying about the test, braiding my hair, reading books, and feeding hungry kittens. And this, oddly enough, is also me. Only here I'm riding a bike, fighting with troublemakers, and playing soccer with a stolen ball. Let me tell you how that happened. Hi, let me introduce myself. I'm Christina, and I've changed so much in the last year. I was a mousy girl my whole life. Well, let's go back a year. That morning, I decided to finally confess my feelings to the most popular boy in school. Everything about Max fascinated me. His looks, his voice, his demeanor. I considered him to be perfect. During the first 2 classes, I was unusually absent-minded. The teacher even had to call my name twice before I could hear her and go to the blackboard. I was so nervous about the confession that the numbers were floating in front of my eyes and the equations were slipping out of my mind. I stood there, lost, in front of the blackboard, and I didn't know how to solve a simple problem. Fortunately, the teacher realized that I was just really excited about something. So she just called me over after class and told me to pay more attention in the future. Otherwise, I risked missing the new material. I promised her to study today's topic at home, and she let me go. It's great that my school has such understanding teachers. I went to the cafeteria. As soon as I sat down at the table, Jessica and her friends came up to me. "Can you believe it? Our star student forgot how to count today," she exclaimed, waving her arms theatrically. "How awful! Are you in love or something?" Her friend joined in. Oh, if they knew how right they were. I furtively glanced at Max, who was eating lunch at the next table, surrounded by his friends, and tried to sneak away from Jessica. Unfortunately, she didn't get away from me that easily. "So why was Miss Know-It-All so absent-minded today?" She continued to interrogate me as she sat down beside me. Something was odd. She'd never sat down at my table before. I sighed heavily. "Jessica, can you please leave me alone? I want to eat in peace." Luckily, Jessica's boyfriend walked into the cafeteria, so she took right off. Her friends followed their leader, and I was able to finish my meal alone. I decided to approach Max right after lunch. Once he was out of the cafeteria, I went up to him and, still very nervous, handed him a letter. In the letter, I told him how much I liked him and what I found attractive about him. I could never confess in person, but the letter made it so easy for me to express my feelings. Max wanted to say something, but I interrupted him. "It's very personal. Read it when you're alone." The guy shrugged his shoulders, took the envelope without saying anything, and left for basketball practice, leaving me standing in the middle of the hallway at a loss. To be honest, deep down, I was hoping for feelings to be mutual. So I walked to school the next day in high spirits. I already imagined him running up to me, hugging me, and telling me he loved me too. I walked into the building with a smile on my face. But once I was in the lobby, my good mood was gone. The entire hallway, all the lockers, and the office doors were covered with copies of my letter. I was shocked. I froze for a few seconds, unable to move. Some of the students had already noticed me and were pointing at me and giggling. Some were trying to pretend not to notice the embarrassment that befell me. "Max, you're so handsome," whispered Jessica, who had suddenly appeared next to me. Her friends giggled and she continued. "So we were right. Our wallflower is in love. Did you really think Max would look at a mousy girl like you?" The girl's words hurt me more and more. I realized what a mistake I'd made when I confessed my love to Max. And in a letter. If it were just words, he wouldn't have been able to embarrass me like that. My eyes welled up with tears, and I didn't want everyone to see me crying, so I rushed out of the school. I came home, locked myself in my room, fell on my bed, and burst into tears. God, I was so hurt and humiliated. I think I cried all night until I fell asleep. My phone rang several times. The number was unfamiliar, so I dropped it. I didn't want Jessica to start reminding me on the phone what a fool I was. After 5 calls from an unknown number, I pulled out my SIM card and promised myself I'd get a new one the next day. Fortunately, my wonderful mom understood my problem. I never went back to that school again, and that's how my new life began. I think I became a different person that night. I started to resent the dresses I used to wear, so I borrowed my older sister's clothes to start with. Then I got into makeup. It became a morning ritual for me. I wouldn't leave the room without spending half an hour at the dressing table. One day, I was sitting on a swing and listening to music. I was immersed in my thoughts, staring at my new sneakers. My meditation was interrupted by a loud noise. It turned out to be 3 guys about my age. They were playing soccer with a soda can and laughing really loudly. At first, I was just watching them. But then one of them accidentally kicked the can under my feet. I kicked the can with my foot, sending it back. It happened several times, and before I knew it, I got into it. By the end, the four of us were playing improvised soccer. I broke up with the guys late at night. They walked me home and we exchanged numbers. The next day, as I was driving home, they called me. "Hello, is Christina there?" Henry asked. I laughed. Yes, that's me. They invited me to meet them and go to the soccer field together.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Yo, set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation. Good food, good mood, blood in circulation. One step at a time, yeah, that's how you make it. Set a goal you control and the steps you take them. I try to pick one thought, have some concentration. And if I make a mistake, it's called education.